Hi everyone, it's Carol Dweck from Careers by Caroll and the Yeshiva Flatbush Pathfinders program, and I'm really excited to be introducing tonight's event to you. It is part of the Real Talk series. Tonight is episode 2, where we're going to be talking about making it big in finance. Joseph Beyda and Abraham Sarway are going to be interviewing Abe Hidary and Jimmy Haber, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm so excited that you tuned in. So I work with students, I work with clients who constantly come to me and say, I want to be in finance. And some of them have no idea what finance is. So this is a really good place to learn what that is. And some of them sort of know what finance is, but they don't know how to make it big in finance. So we're really going to be tackling that tonight. I hope you guys enjoy. I know that you're going to learn a lot. And just to remind you, this event is brought to you by SBH Careers and Exceed. So just to explain to you a little bit about what they do and the differences between them. SBH Careers is all about careers. So they help with everything from making networking events so that you can learn about different careers and meet with different professionals in those fields. They have a mentorship program where they can pair you with somebody in the field of interest that you have. Unbelievable program. They also do job placement. So I know now with Corona, it's a really crazy time. Great time to utilize their resource if you're looking for a job. So they'll sit with you, they'll figure out what you're interested in, and they'll place you with a job. I actually was fortunate enough to work with SBH, and they helped me find what I love and what I do every single day. So they're unbelievable. And because I'm also entrepreneurial, I've had the pleasure of working with Exceed. So Exceed is all about helping community entrepreneurs. So if you have an idea that you just came up with, or maybe a business that you just started, or maybe a business that you've been doing for a while, but you just need that extra help and support, Exceed is a great resource. Definitely reach out to them. I know I've been seeing new businesses pop up left and right because of Corona, and it's an unbelievable thing. Definitely take advantage of this time to be doing something great. So if that's something that you're thinking about, definitely reach out to Exceed. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. And if you're enjoying the Real Talk series, next time we're going to be interviewing women in business. So if you are a woman in business, if you're curious about women in business, if you know somebody who's a woman in business or wants to be in business, definitely tell them to check that out. And I can't wait to see you guys next time. Enjoy.
Welcome, Jimmy and Abe Hidary. Jimmy Haber of Point 72, Abe Hidary of the Carlyle Group. We are excited to have you here, and we would love for you to just give us a brief bio about yourselves to the audience. I guess we'll start with you, Abe. Just tell us about what you're doing, where you work, and everything like that.
Sure. Hi, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I am a vice president at the Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group is a large financial institution that does a lot of different things, but the team that I'm part of is the middle market private equity team. And so what we spend our time doing is investing in mid-sized businesses. That typically means businesses with profitability between 5 million and 50 million. And typically what we'll do is partner with those companies to invest in them, help them grow, help them acquire other businesses, really help them accomplish whatever their business objectives are. And typically our investments last for about 3 to 5 years. So we're not trading public stocks. What we do is we invest in private business. We help them accomplish a series of things over that time period, and then typically we'll sell it to another private equity firm. We'll help it go public, or many times we will sell it to a strategic buyer, which basically means a competitor or a related business that's looking to add this business to what they do.
Awesome. Jimmy Haber, happy to be here. Thanks, guys. I work at a place called Point 72 that used to be known as SAC Capital. I've been there 23 years now. It's a hedge fund, mostly long, short equities, but now has fixed income as well as venture capital, private equity, some other different type of strategies, but basically is long, short. And I concentrate in the financial sector, in which we basically break down the sectors. We have pods, which is basically a portfolio manager and a group of analysts covering a certain industry. And we probably have, I think now, about 65 portfolio managers and 65 pods. And it's been around probably, I've been there 22 years, probably 26 years, and very successful.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. So now to get into the heat of it here. So I want to take you both back to your college days. You know, a lot of young professionals just like us are either still in college or exiting out of college and have trouble navigating, you know, what to do in the world we live in today. So I guess I want to open up and ask you guys, in college, did you guys have any route, you know, going in or during college in terms of a future career? And if so, how did you prepare or strategize to try to make that work, you know, in terms of what you were deciding to do and thinking on the futuristic standpoint?
You want to go ahead, Abe?
Sure. So I did not have a plan. I went to the undergraduate Stern Business Program at NYU, and I was surrounded by a large group of people who were very driven and had a very good sense of what it was that they wanted to do. And I actually didn't have a sense for what I wanted to do. I had different areas of interest. But I sort of early on in my time at NYU heard about investment banking, and the more I started to understand what that was, it sort of made clear to me that it was an opportunity to get into an industry, a large industry of finance, and learn a lot of different skills quickly. And so I sort of viewed working in investment banking after college as an extension of my education, except in this instance, they were going to pay me instead of me paying them. So it seemed like a really great opportunity for me. And my first job was at a boutique investment bank called Houlihan Lokey, where that's really what I did. I was there for 3 years and worked on a bunch of different transactions while I was there. But in terms of in college, I did not really have a plan. And I got a little bit lucky. Today, the system to sort of get into investment banking has become a lot more onerous, I would say. And if you're not preparing several years in advance, really, to build your resume and build your experience set to be able to qualify for a job in investment banking, you may miss the boat. So while I don't expect, or I wouldn't recommend people sort of map out the next 30 years of their lives while they're in college, I do think that exploring investment banking or a bunch of these other programs that require sort of a full resume built out, exploring that early is something I would really recommend if that's something you're interested in.
But while you were in
Thanks, Abe.
college, I just want to interject quickly. While you were in college, were you doing any interviews? Were you doing any internships or anything like that, or you were just staying the course and you've kind of fell into going into investment banking?
I did. I probably did 5 or 6 different internships over the course of my time in college. Not because I couldn't hold down a job, more because I wanted to expose myself to a lot of different things. And the point isn't to do as many internships as you can that are exactly like the job you think you want one day. I actually used it as an opportunity to do a lot of different things that I thought would give me great experiences and great skills and expose me to a bunch of different things. So I worked at a startup one summer. I worked in a leadership position at camp one summer and got a lot of great leadership skills doing that and had a lot of fun along the way. I worked at a investment bank. I tried a bunch of different things, both during the summers and on my free time during the semester, more than anything to sort of get a sense for what I did and didn't, and sort of save myself an inexpensive and easy way to try a bunch of different things.
Great.
I just want to add, can I just add something that I think it's important what AB just said, that I have been out of school for a long time, since 1985, but what I'm seeing more and more and more is resumes that have a lot of experience during the summer. And I know a lot of people want to take the time off because they've had a long year in school, but I can't tell you how important it is that you do have internships. because it shows that, you know, and it could be in anything. It doesn't have to, if you're applying into investment banking or consulting, it could be in other areas, but it just shows that you are driven because you're competing with people that are doing it. So it's important that you, and the same thing that Avi said, that you want to experience different things, because you might think that you want to go into investment banking, and there might be something more interesting that you've experienced in a internship. So it is important. It's important to start early. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in college. I went to the business school. I went to Tulane University in New Orleans. I went to undergrad, entered the business school after sophomore year, typical business school experience. Had no job afterwards. I became a stockbroker. I came to New York. I couldn't get into an internship program. I didn't really even know what they were all about because they never came to campus down in New Orleans. And I got into the business of stocks and bonds. I did it the old-fashioned way. I became a stockbroker, and I did that for 5 years. And I learned about what a hedge fund was at that point. I worked with a guy in his office, a senior guy that had a couple of hedge funds. And I said, that's what I want to do. So after about 5 years, I started a hedge fund, and I did that for 8 years. And it was Steve Cohen's sister, my boss. She was my salesperson, my coverage person at Morgan Stanley. And at a point where I knew I had to either grow my business or find another business, she said to me I should meet her brother, and I did. And at that point, Steve Cohen had about $300 million, which was a significant amount, but not in today's terms. And that's what happened in 1998. And I switched over, and I've been there for this whole period. And it's a transition, and I'm sure that you guys are going to ask, but you know, if you don't get your optimum job at a college or your investment banking program or consultant program, the most important thing is that you get to a place that you can continue to learn, and you just never know what door opens up after that. So that's just a little bit of what happened with me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. It seems like the trend between both of you, and really the path to an ultimate success, is to not really rush things and sort of, you know, do what's right, and you know, experience here and experience there, and just keep that, you know, your brain open to learning constantly. So it seems like you both did that pretty well. Avi, you want to take over on the next one?
Well, I also wanted to find out, during the time you were in college, and I know a lot of young businessmen in our community today, they feel like a pressure during the college years. Like they have to start working. They're working a job during school. Some of them are dropping out of school and working. What do you think about that type of added pressure during college?
Abe?
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I mean, I have a real opinion about this, but I want to hear Abe.
Sure.
I kind of, you know, I'm old, and I believe differently. I've kind of gone through it, and I see things in a way that, like you said before, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. The pressure should not come in college. It's way too early. The college is a time when you're kind of setting up your education, which is so important for your first job. Really kind of setting your stage for what you're going to be doing. And all of that doesn't need to be combined with the pressure of working and feeling like you have to be an entrepreneur at a very young age, and you have to get your life started to what you think it should be. You know, I talk a lot about with young people that you need to form a base with your friends of like minds. Everybody feels that their career and getting started and doing all the right things and not having the outside pressure is important to that group. And what happens is the pressure kind of falls away, and you don't feel the pressure to go out and feel like you need to make $1 billion tomorrow. And you're progressing and you're living a much smoother life, and you're moving towards something that you like to do, and you're finding other things that you like to do. When you have that added pressure, I don't think you experience anything that's going to be helpful. It just doesn't help you. So all of those kind of things, you got to be able to push them away. And I hate to say it, but a lot of times family is putting pressure on you, friends, your peer groups, and somehow you need to start associating yourself, or really kind of getting together with your friends and saying, hey, it's okay if we start at the bottom and we learn and we take it from there.
I completely agree. And one thing that Jimmy mentioned, which is really, I found helpful, is surrounding yourself with people who are pursuing the same goals you are, or at least similar goals. And that doesn't mean sort of change who your friends are. It means sort of take on some additional friends who can act as a support group. And people have a sense that, college is a time to have a ton of fun, and it is, and it can be, but it's also an amazing opportunity to get internships and do well in school and learn and start to set up the rest of your life. And so it was important for me to have some friends at school, and also some members of the community who were also pursuing careers in finance. And the first apartment I had, I lived with 2 other guys from the community, both who were doing investment banking. And, as some people know, investment banking, the hours are pretty rigorous, and we'd go 3, 4, 5 days without even seeing each other. But when we did, it was very helpful to know that we were sort of all going through it together. And that sort of support system, I think, is very, very helpful and important to sort of putting blinders on a little bit to some of those exterior pressures.
Right. Okay, great. So now that you had those experiences in school, I want to fast forward all the way to today. You had those experiences in school, you had employees, you've hired. What is something that, when you're automatically looking at an individual, that you see that stands out to you? What are things that, young businessmen can start doing now that will really benefit them, rather than what they think will benefit them? Abe, you could take that if you want.
Go.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. I think hustle is something that is extremely important, and it's something that translates across all different areas of the business world and really life. And pretty quickly, when you meet people, you can tell if they're sort of going through the motions, or they're 9-to-5 type people, or if they're people that really care and take ownership of the work that they do, and they think about how can I be doing this better. And I don't know if hustle is the right word for it, but I think you have a sense for what I'm describing. Somebody who is entrepreneurial in terms of how they take on their job. That doesn't mean entrepreneurial not in the sense that they go out and start a company. Entrepreneurial in that they take ownership of what it is they're doing. And somebody asks me to do X, I don't simply do it in the easiest or the shortest way. I consider, why are they asking me to do that, and what's the best way I can do it. And if there's a specific way people have been doing it, but I think there might be a different or better way or more efficient way to do it, suggest that, right? It's the people that think like that, who take ownership of what they're doing, and who really care, and who put in the hustle. I think that's something that is something you should get in the habit of doing in all areas of your life, but especially when you're young, because that's something that people really, really appreciate. And it's that attitude that gets you put on the good projects, and it's the good projects that get you put in the best positions. And those are the ones that'll create opportunities over the course of your career.
Right. I want to follow that up with, you said hustle is a great thing to have, but hustle is a hard thing to put on paper. that's something that you really just come with. So when you're really evaluating a prospect, how do you gauge their hustle? How can somebody that thinks to have that hustle or that type of energy that a company will love, how do they put that on paper for you to say, okay, this kid has it, I want to bring him in, even if some of his other qualifications aren't as strong as another person that just loved the books?
You're right. It's hard to tell when you first meet somebody, but I think in talking to them, you can talk about things that they've worked on and experiences they've had, and very quickly you can get a sense for the attitude and the approach that people bring to the work that they do. And so I do think that the internships that you do will speak to that. The references that you provide will speak to that. And so I think it's an approach that everybody should try to adopt. And yes, it may not come across on paper the first time, but if it's something you consistently practice, it will put you in really great situations, and really great opportunities will present themselves.
Right.
Yeah. I just want to add something to that. I agree with Abe, and what I would add to that is these kids, you guys are really, really smart, and you have something in you that is very entrepreneurial, very self-aware, very I don't know, you put yourself, I would put a kid in the community, with the stock market down 500 with a gun to their head saying, what would you do? I would put them in that seat before I would put, a Harvard straight A student. But what I find is that a lot of people, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but a lot of people in the community feel like, okay, I'll get through school and I'm that guy. And they think that, quote unquote, that hustle will get them there. And what AB's saying is, listen, you've got to put the time in, you got to do the work, you got to show that you're the guy that your boss wants on the next project and the next project. And that takes a lot of work. That's just not going to be from your guts and glory. You got to put the time in. And and sometimes it's upsetting to me to see a lot of young guys in the summer around on a Friday. You got to put the time in. I truly believe that these guys, these girls, these guys in the community can compete, and Abe can tell you, because he's young and he's been around it. I see it all the time. They can compete with anybody, but you have to have what's under the hood to support yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not the idea that you're going to grind it out and kind of overwhelm somebody with your personality. It's a little bit more than that, but we are geared for so many different businesses. And I feel like a lot of people are scared to get into finance because of the pluses and the minuses. And it takes a lot of work. Abe works until 3 o'clock in the morning when he was doing the investment banking program. That's what you have to put in. And I believe, and I've seen the guys in our community that have done that really, really exceed. So you got to put the time in.
I completely agree. And I think the real secret and the real powerful combination is taking somebody who has that innate hustle and that innate ability and put them in Harvard, because many people in our community, many people listening to this are capable of straight A's at Harvard. And can you only imagine if you put those two things together, how powerful of a combination that can be?
Yeah.
And many of the opportunities that are afforded to people who go to specific schools or specific programs, or even know how to pursue certain difficult to get jobs at a school, once you get through that door, you can very quickly separate yourself with many of the things that many people, on this Zoom have sort of from growing up within the community. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's an opportunity to sort of put the two together.
Right. Jimmy, do you
That's
have
a good point.
Do you have anything on top of hustle that stands out to you when you're evaluating a prospect? Something that, kids could start working
No,
on?
you gotta. It's the word. You gotta have the. I hire guys. I'm not the nuts and bolts guy, but I grew up in a different generation. Abe can tell you now. You need to understand how to build what he's building. The modeling and the Excel spreadsheets and being able to work until all hours of the night on presentations and stuff like that. That's a different game than me, but I could see right through it. I could see if a guy can talk his way around it or if he really has it.
Mhm.
I'm saying to you, and I agree with Abe, and I think he brings up a good point. You should never underestimate yourself about going to a Harvard or a Yale or a Cornell or anywhere else. These kids can do it, but it takes a lot of high school work, and a lot of them are not driven. So that's even a younger discussion. But the point is, people see through it, and what Abe says is getting on the other projects and completing them and being asked to go on a more sophisticated project. That only comes from doing good work, and the hustle helps, but you got to come through with the goods.
Right. So that ties in perfectly into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which was about adding value in a company that you're in. You come into a company where you have, let's say, 50, 60 other employees in the same field as you doing the same exact task. How do you set yourself apart? Like, because all these guys could do the same great job as you. Maybe, there's one result that your employer wants to see. What is something that people can do to set themselves apart? And I guess, Jimmy, you could start with this because Abe had the last one.
No, he should probably start with this because my model is a lot different. I would hire a guy, let's say, out of an investment banking program. He would work on my team. If I made a poor hire, then I only have a couple of guys, 3-4 guys. So it becomes very evident. It's not in my situation that I've ever hired. I never had a pool of 60 and guys are scratching to get to the top. Mm-hmm. But in an investment bank where there are a number of people, Abe would probably be able to tell you what it takes. If I make a bad hire, I got to figure out how to get rid of him or help him or whatever, but it's going to be a one-off hire.
Right.
So
in an investment bank, the expectation is really long hours. And the culture that develops, especially among the junior people, is we know we're going to have to work really long hours, but let's do everything we can to avoid that at all costs. And this is a 2 or 3 year program, and let's sort of just slog and get through. And then let me sort of get this behind me so I can get this on my resume and go get some other job that I can't get unless I have investment banking on my resume. And I think taking a different approach to that is something that was very helpful for me. And it's something I suggest, because if you're going to do it anyway, make the most of it. And so if you're going to be there till 3 a.m., at least get the good project. Get the one that's going to advance your career. Get the one that's going to teach you something. And in an investment bank, there are a lot of incoming analysts. That's the entry level role. And there's somebody that's typically called a staffer. And the staffer is the one who's in charge of giving out the projects. And so the culture becomes the staffer comes walking down the hall and everybody either runs to go to the bathroom or go get a coffee or, bring up 7 Excel models to make it like they're really busy because they don't want the next project. Mm-hmm. But what you don't realize is that if you go to the staffer, you're going to get staffed on something at some point, and we're all there till 3 o'clock in the morning anyway. But if you go to the staffer and say, hey, I've got some extra capacity, or there's some interesting projects coming down the line, right? Then you're not the one that's every now and then unlucky and get the thankless project that nobody wants on 4th of July weekend. You're the one that actually controls your own destiny. So, it's a little bit like working out. If you're not going to make the most of it, you're not going to really get what you need from it. If you're just going to, sort of fake the motions, right? Don't go through the motions, make the most of it. You're there, you're going to put in bad hours. It will be over at some point. You will progress in your career, but make the most of it. And that's what I tried to do. And we'll talk about it at some point, but the deals that I worked on led to the next job that I got. And the next job that I got led to the job that I currently have. So, I talk a lot about sort of creating these opportunities for yourself and putting yourself in the position to do that. And so that's one example of something you can do to separate yourself in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So when you were,
no,
go on, Jimmy.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was just going to add to that. I think what Abe touched on is really important. You know what it takes to put yourself into a position. It's really that simple. It's are you going for the cup of coffee, or you looking up and saying, hey, I'm ready, what looks fun, what looks interesting, and that's how you do it,
Right. So during the time you were working there, you felt that when you were in your analyst position, you felt that the best thing you could do to excel was really just chase the best jobs, the best projects. And you felt that that was the only type of task or whatever it is that could excel you to the next level.
I don't think it's the only task. I think it's a mindset. It gets back to the mindset of, I am here to contribute. I'm eager. And I've got hustle, right? It all gets back to that. They're all related. And so if you're the guy asking for more work, not hiding from more work, then you're the guy that's going to get the good project, not the transient project that, we'll throw some kid on it for a little bit of time just because we have to do it. And then that project goes away. You'll get the more rewarding work. So it gets back to that whole attitude.
Right.
And I think, great points, guys. And I think even just to piggyback off of that, so now to be in a larger, work environment, in terms of growth, so obviously adding value and, showing that hustle and hunger to take on those next, bigger projects, and to show that you're always willing and able and willing to put in the hours. Are you able, when you're really in the heat of either being an analyst or just in the thick of really working hard, in whatever position you're in a large company, are you able to sort of sit and realize, I'm in the right position, or, should I expect to see growth soon? And am I supposed to be pushing harder because growth hasn't come yet? Or even along the lines of, I've been here for 2 years, and I'm still in the same position. Like, is it time for me to look elsewhere? How do you evaluate that measurement within yourself in a larger corporate company, or even just within any company that's not your father's business, right? Something that you don't really get that special treatment.
I'll start.
Yeah,
oh.
Sure. No worries.
Okay. With me, it's very simple. If I have a couple of analysts and they're covering, if I have a young guy that's covering banks and asset managers, and for a year, and he's really come up to speed on the industry, and he's gone through a couple of earning cycles, and he's got intelligent things to say rather than just spitting out data, it just kind of formulates it. There's not, I think the biggest problem is you don't have to think that much. It's like what Abe said before. It's like things open up. He worked on a deal that became a bigger deal, and all of a sudden they brought him onto that company, and he moved on to another company. Because you don't necessarily always every minute have to be looking what's going to get you to the next level. You kind of let it just kind of move that way. In my case with these analysts, when they become really good at their sectors, and they have a real value add, and all of a sudden he says, I know the number is going to be this for the quarter, but I think they're going to print that number. But I think the stock's going to go down because I feel like everybody knows it, and he starts to try to formulate an idea. And let's say that he kind of gets a feel of the markets and he kind of understands that. So after that point, I may be more willing to say to him, what's going on in asset managers? What are your 3 favorite ideas? And he may pitch me those stocks, and I may say to him, you know what, I think we're going to put those on. And all of a sudden he has more ownership to that. And then he gets to a point maybe a year after that or 2 years after that where he comes to me and he said, I've been looking at these names, which are really undercovered, and these are the reasons why I think we should be putting them in. And before you know it, he's been with me for a number of years. And if he wants, he will either have a carve out or he'll go off and become a portfolio manager. So it's not, there doesn't have to be so much a conscious effort every day of what do I need to do to get to the next level, or am I stuck here? You're going to know if you're stuck, and you're going to know if you're not good, because you'll be stuck. So hopefully you're not in that position. It's more like you are moving along and you're doing all the right things and you're getting better at your job. As Abe says, you kind of become better. And as you get better, you become more valuable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Abe, what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think you have to have some level of patience. You may have this idea, or you think there's an expectation that, oh, I've done this for 2 years, I'm supposed to be the CEO now, and that just doesn't happen, and it certainly doesn't happen in a corporate environment. And really, all you can do is do the best job that you can at the role you have, and demonstrate that to people. And companies are always looking for great assets. And if you do a good job enough times, repetitively, you are going to get pulled onto the best projects, or you're going to get promoted. And it's not about a title. At large corporations, sometimes it is. If you're not being promoted in the sort of along the schedule that most people are, then that's a little bit of a hint that you might need to sort of figure something out, or look at what you're doing and how you can do it better. But don't sort of get caught up in your title, right? Is what you're doing meaningful? And are you somebody who they wait to start the meeting because Joe's not there yet? That's what you want to become. You want to become the guy in the room, and they're not doing it out of respect. They're doing it because they won't have the numbers they need, or you won't hear what you need to hear in order to do something, some task that's critical to what's happening in that meeting. So you want to insert yourself and become important. And if you do that, you're going to, many great opportunities are going to come in front of you, whether those be promotions, whether those be other job opportunities. You got to just put yourself in the middle of things.
Well said. Being at this young age right now, I do find myself falling victim to that whole, constantly thinking about the position that I'm in, right? And constantly thinking about what could I do better, and this is taking too long. And I 110% understand that it's a process, and it takes patience, and it takes work, and things come together. Definitely tough for people like us to really gather, but it's something that we should understand and really take to heart, because there's no shortcut to becoming a vice president or a CEO or whatever it is. It takes work, it takes results, and it takes time. So thank you both for that. Now it's sort of to pivot, still within a company and growth. I wanted to get your insights as to how, what best strategies you both use to make long-lasting relationships and connections, and what type of networking abilities and strategies that you find, beneficial, and that you've seen have been, advantageous to you. So, Jimmy, you want to start with that one?
I'll start with that. In our business, Abe included, it's the biggest business out there. It's finance, and it's the smallest industry out there. If I want to find out about Abe, besides knowing his one of his partners very, very well, I can make one phone call and I will get a D&B report on him in 10 seconds. And I'll know in 10 seconds if he's easy to work with, if he's smart, and so on and so forth. The access to information is out there. So I think number one, you need to keep your nose clean. You just need to do the right things. Your relationships, you don't want to burn people. You don't want to step on people because the street is really, really small. And one phone call back to Carlyle or back to SAC, hey, how's Jimmy? He's interviewing here. You know, that's it. You're done. I can't tell you how many people, when they get to certain levels, they don't treat people the right way. They don't build the right relationships, and they burn people. And then they get burned in the end. It's a small, small industry, as big as it is. And my relationships are with the Merrill Lynches of the world and all of that. And I'm trading with the other side all day long. And I can tell you, the one thing is they'll always say about Jimmy is I'm fair. I've never backed away from anything. I've been a pleasure to work with because I know those people can easily hurt me in a big way for the rest of my career. And I've built great relationships with those people. And inside your company. Businesses are very competitive, but if you do all the right things, you become part of that business. And that's what you always have to worry about. And every door that opened for me has opened because of the relationships I built, because they allowed me to progress. And from what I hear from Abe, the same thing happened with him, you know, and those are the things that make you move along. If you start to build up walls and you start to build enemies, it's going to be a very lonely place.
I agree, and I think, and this doesn't get to your question on networking, but it relates to something Jimmy said, which was, you know, it's a very small world, and people's impressions of you within the industry can be really important. And one tip or one piece of advice that people gave me in that regard is something that I think works really well, which is try to make a really great first impression, because people will judge you based on that first impression. So what do I mean by that? When you first start at the investment bank, if you're the go-getter and you're the guy who's always working hard and always doing, you know, really great work and is always proactively asking for work, if you do that for your first few weeks, you become that guy. And everything you do, if you then make 3 mistakes in a row, oh, well, he's really great and he works really hard and that's not like him. He must not be well rested, right? But if you come out the gate and develop a reputation, or people perceive you as somebody who's not necessarily a go-getter or a little careless, and then you make those same 3 mistakes over the same period of time, every time you make that mistake, people will be, oh my gosh, this guy can't stop making mistakes. So it's really about sort of perception, especially early in your career. And I think that nobody's perfect, but that if you can get out of the gate strong and develop really great first impressions with the people you work with, the people you work for, I think that's going to be really important. And then back to your question on networking, to me, I think the key is trying to be authentic. And there's many people that think networking is go to a trade show with, you know, a stack of 100 business cards and, you know, have transient 10-minute conversations with a bunch of different people. That's not networking. Networking is working on a project with somebody who works at another firm and picking up the phone outside of the context of that transaction and learning a little bit about who they are and developing a little bit of a personal relationship with them. That's somebody who's going to remember you within the industry. That's somebody who's going to pick up the phone and call you next time there's a project. So I think trying to just take a more authentic and friendship related approach rather than a numbers game. How many LinkedIn connections can I get? Or, you know, how many business cards can I give out? Or how many business cards can I get at a cocktail party? It's not about that. And, you know, that business card sits in a stack on someone's desk. It's about creating real relationships with people that I think is what's going to be beneficial for you over the long term, or for anybody.
Right. And I want to follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a company and, you know, you're working hard, you're doing all the right things, you're getting a little bit of attention, you're not sure if it's the right amount of attention, but you're getting some attention. Is there a good tip or way that you could give to a person that's lower on the totem pole to network up in the company? to some of the more senior staff without looking like he's, trying to reach, but, generally just wants to make friends with everybody, and that will most likely benefit him in the long run.
Can I'd say something to that. That's an interesting question, because it's a tough question to answer, because you can't be the guy that everyone thinks is just a great guy. He's so much fun. He's got a great personality. Yeah, he's a great guy to hang out with, but maybe not bring onto my team or my project or to ask to do something. You don't want to be that guy. And I think that a lot of people in our community have great personalities, and they're great persons, but you kind of got to separate that. And along the lines that Abe said, it's the first impression is really important, but it doesn't need to be a backslap, and the personality doesn't have to come out on first impressions. You want people to know that you're serious and that you're smart and you're diligent and you take things seriously. Your personality will come out. You also, you have to be very careful about what you described, going up the pole. And if you could hit somebody that, just doesn't look at it the way you look at it, that you're just trying to kind of meet people and, learn about people. It's tough out there, and people are very defensive, and, they think that everybody wants a piece of them. So you have to be very careful how you approach that. It has to be very natural, has to be over time. It can't be an in-your-face type of situation where you're at a cocktail party or something and you just run up to somebody, because you just don't know if you're going to offend them. That's my biggest concern. Right. You don't know how other people are going to take it. You have to be careful.
Right. But on the flip side, it may be that if you do make the right impression, it can potentially open a door for you, or you don't think the risk is there for that?
I don't know, Abe. I mean, this business is made up of, it's tough. It's big money, it's big people, it's big egos. I don't know if you want to take chances that are not calculated.
Right.
I guess is the better way to look at it. You got to be really careful, because, you don't want that guy to say, or get the wrong impression and say, why is that guy talking to me? Why?
Right.
Yeah. Am I right about that, Abe?
Yeah, I think it needs to feel natural, and that's something you said, and that's key, right? I don't walk in the first day of my job and knock on the CEO's office and sort of just say, hey, you got a minute, and sort of just walk in there and be friendly and chummy with them, right? It's got to be natural, and you will work with very senior people from day one, right? And so do a good job for the first week, the first 2 weeks, the first 3 weeks. Then you can sort of make a comment about a picture that may be on your boss's desk and say, oh, your kids look, there's a kid there playing soccer, and then, gradually over the course of months, you start to develop a relationship that's beyond just work, right? And then it's 3:00, and you see that guy going to grab a cup of coffee, and he naturally says, hey, Joe, or hey, Abe, why don't you come with me? I'm going to pick up a Starbucks, right? And then, he's human too, or she's human too, and they want to talk about something else other than work for 10 minutes while they're picking up a coffee. And then before you know it, months and years have gone by, and then you've got real personal, authentic relationships with people. And I hear what Jimmy's saying, which is, you don't want to come off as, as that guy, or as the backslapper, or as the guy with the, the big laugh, but there's no real substance there. You earn your way, and earn your trust with these people by the work that you do. And, people in the end of the day are people. And so they're going to ask you your girlfriend's name or your wife's name, or, what's going on in your life, or where you live, and, take those, be receptive to them, and slowly over time evolve those into more natural relationships. And the first job that I had at Houlihan, I was lucky enough to work on a project pretty early on where the guy who ran the entire department worked on it. And he is a guy that I today I consider him a personal friend. I consider him an uncle at this point. He every time I see him, he gives me a hug. He texts me randomly, "Hey Abe, how you doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. Let's grab lunch." And this is a guy who, oversees literally hundreds of people. And it's part of it is his style, but part of it is, you work in the trenches with somebody for a long time and you impress them with the content of your work. And over time, they want to get to know you personally as well. So I think it's very important to take Jimmy's advice in terms of trying to make it feel natural. And if it doesn't feel natural and it feels like it's being forced, then it probably is.
So essentially let your performance do the talking initially, and then after you're noticed, maybe you could drop a comment if you have the opening, maybe.
Start to build and be natural and authentic in the process.
I think that's right.
Right. Okay. So that's great. Thank you for that. So to kind of finish this off, and I'm sure a lot of people are very curious because you guys are both substantial businessmen in your field. We would love to hear, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we would love to hear like your each individual business outlooks for the maybe short term and long term, I guess, and just see what you're thinking about that in capital markets, I guess.
I'll let you go first, Jimmy, and I'm going to take notes.
No, please. Well, first of all, I've gotten it all wrong because I have been speaking to probably the smartest businessmen in the world, which are people in our community as well as outsiders. And I feel like there's going to be a slow comeback for all the obvious reasons that we all read about, see, and experience in our own lives. In the market, just speaking on the markets, the market is not only based in New York City on Madison Avenue, and the rest of the world wants to open up, and they see opening up as an opportunity to get back to normal living. And because of that, people feel confident that we're going to get to the other side at some point, even with 30 million, 35 million people unemployed. My feeling is, many of them are going to go back. But I think when businesses have a reset button that they just pushed, they're going to think about things differently if they have the opportunity. And many businesses won't even have an opportunity. So I look at it that way. I've missed this whole rally off the bottom. I just didn't believe it. And I have to just kind of take my New York City hat off and kind of appreciate that the rest of the world wants to get back to working, as we now see on the 6:30 news. And that's going to drive the world in thinking. So, I'm kind of, the other thing is this is just a comment, you can't get stubborn. As my boss always says, you could be right and lose a lot of money, and the market is always the final judge. So, if I'm short the market or not involved and it goes up all the time, I'm wrong. And I have to do something about that. And we've all learned at the place that I work that we have to, reassess and not get stubborn. So, that's what I'm going to do. I hope that, God willing, we find a vaccine or some kind of medicine that brings people, into more comfort. But it's going to be a long time.
Thanks, Jimmy. Abe, what's your future perspective?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, I think it's pretty clear that there are going to be some permanent and long-term changes in how we work, how certain industries have accelerated things that were going to happen in 10 years, in 20 years are already happening. I think that the effect of this will be, there will be a number of very significant long-term changes. I'm not smart enough to call exactly what they are, but what does that mean to me as an investor? That means to keep my eyes open and sort of look for what those seem to be developing into. And so retail will change. E-commerce adoption has accelerated. Talked to many of the companies that we have investments in. Things that they hadn't been thinking or expecting would happen until 2030 or beyond are already happening in terms of what they're seeing in their businesses. So I think it's going to be important for job seekers, for entrepreneurs, for business people to understand that we're in the midst of some really significant change, and keep your eye out in terms of how does that impact you? How does that impact where there might be opportunity to invest? How does that impact where there are the types of jobs you may want to go look for? I think it touches everything. The other perspective that I would add is that, and this is a little bit different given the nature of what I do, which is relatively long-term investing. There doesn't need to be a rush to act on everything that's happening right now. I don't have a portfolio of stocks that I need to every day decide, do I want to buy these or do I want to sell these? So, my perspective is a little bit different, but we actually went back as a firm and looked at the 3-year period following the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. And over that course of time, as a firm, we did close to, I think the number was 98 different private equity deals and other deals, but not public market trades is what I mean. And what I think was most interesting was to see that the deals done in the first 6 months of that 3-year time period were actually worse than the deals that were done in the remaining 2.5-year period. And so, in our business, we have capital to invest. Our investors give us capital, and they only give us so much capital. And so, for people listening to this, their form of capital may be time, or maybe opportunity. And don't rush into sort of using that all right in the early days following this crisis. What we're trying to do is be really patient and sort of see where things are headed, see how things unfold. And then, there's no award that you get for being the guy to do the first deal following sort of this outbreak, right? So, our approach is going to be very patient and sort of understanding of the fact that the world has changed, and try best we can to sort of see which direction that's headed, and invest in companies that are poised to sort of ride those tailwinds.
Right. And now a lot of students are now graduating into this new time that really kind of shifted what they're going to need to work on, where they're going to need to work. Most people used to travel for their jobs. Now they may not have to. Do you think there's going to be like a difference on the types of things that a student would have to do to get their jobs now? Do you think they'll be able to get those same jobs? What are your thoughts on it? Or what would you say to a student that just came out of school, that was ready to get their investment banking job, but now it's a different time?
It's always a different time. When I started working, mobile email, I'm going to date myself, right? But my first device at work was a BlackBerry, and that was relatively novel at the time. And I remember everybody saying, "Oh my God, this is going to totally transform the way we work." In the old days, when I was an analyst, we had to be tethered to a landline phone. Now you can be wherever you want. And as much as things change, they don't really sort of change that much. And so I think what's important is to recognize that you need to have some element of flexibility, and you need to do the things that will sort of, cross over those changes. So we talked earlier about hustle. We talked about developing, authentic personal relationships. We talked about a lot of those things. Those things will be important whether you're flying somewhere to meet somebody, or you're actually may even be more important if you're doing it over Zoom, right? So I think focusing on maintaining flexibility and being, able to jump in a new direction or a new opportunity when it presents itself, but also working on those skills that are going to be important, through all these changes.
Right.
Yeah, I would just add something to Abe that, he talked about disruption, and he really kind of laid out the way that they look at deals and all of that. This disruption that occurred now is something that we have never seen in the history of modern times. The world never stopped like it did now. So in fact, that the kids coming out of college now have the best opportunity because of this disruption. There's going to be more opportunity. If you come out in an economy that's growing 2% a year and real estate is hot and the deals are done at 1% returns and everybody's chasing this job and that job, that's not disruption. That's hell. That's the hardest. It's an open situation that everybody's looking at, and it's just moving in that slow direction that just doesn't work for anybody but a select few. This disruption will create opportunity, right? So people really should keep the ear to the ground. They should keep their eyes open, because things are going to come out. Businesses are going to be rearranged. Things are going to be thought about. Like Abe said, the way that we conduct and the way that we live our lives and the way that we do commerce, it's all changed. And you can sit there with your friends and talk about it on days on end. So there is only opportunity. I think this is the best time to ever go out and find a job. If you're entrepreneurial, if you're, whatever way it is, you're going to see a lot of things. But be careful, and I agree with Abe, you don't want to be the first guy in the pool, because it's not necessarily the best opportunity, but you're going to see a lot of things.
Right.
And that's really a big deal.
Something like this does create a disproportionate opportunity, as Jimmy said, for younger people, right?
Yeah.
The entire deck has been scrambled. Younger people are viewed as having more energy, having more creative thinking. They tend to be cheaper. And so you're going to actually have a lot more opportunity, as Jimmy was describing. So sort of be ready, be thoughtful. If you're sitting home now and you may be looking at sitting home for the next several months, be thoughtful and creative about how to use your time in a way that's going to either impress an employer or create some sort of opportunity that you may want to pursue even full-time when all this is over, all this evolves into, I don't know what it'll evolve into, frankly, but, what did you do when you were home for 5 months and you didn't have children and you had very few responsibilities? What did you do? Oh, well, I started a business, or I, emailed 25 different firms saying, I know it's a crazy time, but I'm young and I'm smart and I can do a lot of interesting things on the computer. Let me help you in your company for free. What can I do to help you? Right? Be creative. Think a little bit outside the box as to how you could make use of this time and prepare yourself for when things do open back up.
Right.
That's great advice. Thank you for that.
And I wanted to ask one more question on that, and it ties into the networking. What do you think, what is your outlook on people or young kids reaching out to people that work in a company directly, asking them for, I don't know, about a job, or reaching out, like you said, like, let me help you. I'm ready to go. Like,
and then a shot in the dark email.
It's always a good idea. Because of what's going on right now, I think older people that have built businesses are in disarray. So you have to be really mindful and careful about kind of, what you're looking for, and if you're really going to upset somebody or, kind of give them the wrong impression. A lot of times you have to be self-aware, and you have to say, if I see so-and-so on the street, it's probably an easier conversation than for me to send him an email to his office now that he's getting back to work, trying to figure out what his work is. You have to be mindful of what's going on. It's not only about you. You have to be careful, given what's going on now, what people are going through. And, great resources in this community, the smartest people. Abe and I talk about it all the time. Nobody has resources like we have, but you have to be very careful and mindful right now, unfortunately, because of what everybody is going through.
Great point.
Sure. Thank you.
One other thing I would just say, young people have nothing to lose. They don't have a job. They don't own a home. They probably lease a car, and that's it. Other people that have built families and all that, they're not willing to take the risks that you guys are willing to take. That's a big leg up. It's a big leg up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, guys. This was awesome. I know myself and Abe really appreciate your time, appreciate your answers, your wise insight and advice that you gave us, especially for the young people just like us that are in college, coming out of college, or have been a few years out of college. This is definitely beneficial, I know, to myself at least, just graduating. And again, we really appreciate what you've given us here for the past, an hour. And, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. Thanks, Abe.
I really appreciate it. That was amazing.